Okay, so getting back into our coverage over Kurt Busiek and also George Perez run on the Avengers, we're going to pick up with issues number 8 and issues number 9. Now, this two-part story arc, I kind of realized what was going on here around this time in the 1990s for Marvel Comics. And what I mean by that statement is that, remember, this Avengers run comes right after Heroes Reborn. And so prior to Heroes Reborn, when it came to Marvel Comics, they were freaking out. And the reason why, because they had some books that were no longer selling. The idea of the Avengers no longer selling. The Fantastic Four, Iron Man, and the list goes on. And so you had Marvel push those characters into a different reality, brought back old creators in hoping to save those characters. But after 1 year, as we all saw, it technically failed. And so when it came to Marvel, they pushed those characters back into the main Marvel universe. And you then had George Perez and Kurt Busiek come together to work on the Avengers. Now, this run is, very loved by a huge amount of people. But with this two-part story arc, you kind of get the idea that it was them saying, hey, listen, this is the Avengers, and sometimes they add in new characters you never saw before. So why not go ahead and do that now with this two-part story arc? Begin to kind of change up the roster. And technically, ever since the first story arc had ended, this roster has gone through a couple of changes. Matter of fact, our last video, we saw Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers, officially leave the team. Now, I'm not going to lie. At first, I kind of thought this was going to be a Jarvis story completely. And the reason why, because in the first page of issue number 8, we see Jarvis telling Steve Rogers that he's heading over to the airport. And the reason why, because he has been sponsoring this young girl known as Maria de Guadalupe Santiago, who's from Costa Verde. And apparently her family is sending her over to, well, New York for some kind of school thing. And so for Jarvis, it's his job to watch over her. The problem is that when he arrives at the airport, the plane she's coming in blows up. And right after that, we see a bunch of random soldiers just pop out of the plane. But on top of that, we're also being introduced to a new character, and that would be Silver Claw. Now, Silver Claw is actually Maria, the young girl Jarvis came to the airport to pick up. And so right now we're getting the idea that this could be a new Avengers member. Now we do shift over to the Avengers. Now for the Avengers, we kind of get the idea the team is kind of going through a lot. For example, we do pick up with Justice and also Firestar. Now originally, those two characters were part of the New Warriors. After that, they had officially joined the Avengers. Now for Firestar, she's kind of going through a lot because she had to push herself beyond her limits to the point where her powers could have caused some serious damage to herself, but also to her team. And for her, she kind of hates the idea of being pushed that far when it comes to her abilities, because technically she could hurt somebody, not just herself, but the people around her. And for Justice, you kind of realize what's going on right now in Firestar's mind. But you also have this chapter kind of removing Thor for a tad bit. And the reason why, because in 1998, in the brand new Thor book, we got the idea of Thor right now fighting against the dark gods. And matter of fact, we're covering that storyline as well, where you have Thor just trying his best to figure out what exactly happened to Asgard when it came to him coming back from the Heroes Reborn reality. But also, he's kind of busy with other things at the moment, like pretending to be a regular human known as Jake Olsen. And so for Thor, he has to leave the mansion for a short period of time. But we also see that there are some other issues going on with the Avengers, like for example, the Scarlet Witch and Hawkeye. Now for Hawkeye, the reason why he is so upset is because of the Thunderbolts. And the reason why, because while the Avengers were gone in the Heroes Reborn reality, well, unfortunately, they had a new team pop up. That was the Thunderbolts. Now, the Thunderbolts were a bunch of characters who were bad guys back in the day that came together by Baron Zemo. Now, for Baron Zemo, he did have some kind of master scheme behind the idea of putting that team together, but for a good while there, for the Thunderbolts, the world knew how bad they were, but of course forgave them. And so now they're a superhero team out there again. But for the Scarlet Witch, she has her own things going on at the moment. And the reason why I'm saying that, because for the Scarlet Witch, man, okay, so we have learned early on in the series that for the Scarlet Witch, her powers have the ability to bring Wonder Man back to life. Now, Wonder Man died a long time ago in a storyline in Force Works comics, but then thanks to the Scarlet Witch, out of nowhere, she's able to bring him back to life. But unfortunately, it makes no sense on how she's able to do that. And so for her, she's kind of wondering like, how in the world is she doing it? Now, at the same time, Vision is also part of the Avengers, but they're no longer dating. But you get the idea that for the Vision, he wants to get back with the Scarlet Witch. But at the same time, her other lover, Wonder Man, is also coming back in the picture as well. But all of that does get put on the back burner when you have the Avengers get the call. And of course, that call is coming from Jarvis, the idea of what's currently happening right now over at the airport. So you do have most of the Avengers, minus Iron Man and Thor, answer the call and head straight over there to help out Jarvis. And really, it does not take the Avengers that long to get over there. Now, it's not the entire team because you only had the Scarlet Witch, Justice, Hawkeye, Steve Rogers, and also Firestar arriving to the scene to hopefully bring down these soldiers, but to also bring down Silverclaw as well. Now, as the battle continues on, out of nowhere, you then have our heroes get trapped behind some kind of like energy cage. And so with our heroes now being trapped, they're no longer able to officially stop the bad guys from getting what they want to achieve. And we also learn who these guys truly work for. And they work for a character known as Moses Magnum. Now, when it comes to Moses Magnum, he is a character that we have talked about only here and there on the channel. And really, at first, when he popped up, it was Giant Size Spider-Man issue number 4, where he fought against, of course, Spider-Man and also the Punisher. Now, he fought against the X-Men as well, and Black Panther and Power Man. Like, he fought a few characters, but not the Avengers. Now, for Moses here, originally he was just a human, but he was mutated by Apocalypse. Now, that right there is really important for the second half of this storyline. Now, luckily for our heroes, they do have somebody there to help them get out of their cage to allow them the ability to fight once again. And that would be the character known as Triathlon. And oh my God, this is a character where I heard about him, but I never truly read a story about him. You see, when it comes to this character, he's 3 times stronger and faster than a regular human being. Now, we're going to learn more about his origin here in the second half of the storyline, but he came here to stop Moses Magnum. But also with him being there, he's also was able to release the Avengers and allow them the ability to fight against Moses Magnum once again. Now, as this battle goes on, we kind of get the idea that the attack on the airport, the attack on the plane was really just a diversion. And the reason why, because for Moses Magnum and his people, they came there for this seismic cannon. Now, of course, with that cannon, that means it can cause some earthquakes around the world very easily. But for the Avengers, they're trying their best to stop him. But unfortunately, they're easily overpowered by all the different men who work for him, but also Silverclaw as well. Now, when it comes to Silverclaw, we do learn that she does have the ability to shapeshift into different creatures that are found in the jungle. So, of course, it does kind of make her a tad bit a hard opponent for someone like Steve Rogers. Now, in the middle of the battle is also Steve asking the Scarlet Witch to bring in Wonder Man. They need a hard hitter. The problem is that she can't do it. And she does not understand why she's not really able to achieve the idea of bringing in Wonder Man to help out with this situation. But luckily for our heroes, Thor and Iron Man do arrive. So, of course, they do get two big time hitters to help out with this situation. The problem is that you do have Moses Magnum people go ahead and use the cannon on different parts of the building of the airport. So, now for our heroes, they now have to shift their focus to help out the innocent people who are currently trapped inside the building, where of course it does allow Moses Magnum and his men to get away with the cannon. Now, for our good old favorite new character, Triathlon, he does sneak onto the plane that Moses is currently using, where of course the cannon is also on the plane as well. So they leave. And for the Avengers, they don't realize they had just lost their new, well, ally. But you also have the Avengers take in Silverclaw, and here's the reason why. I know it sounds wild, but here's the reason why. Because the only reason why she was working with Moses Magnum is because she was kind of forced to work with him because, well, they were holding on to innocent people, and they said, if you don't help us, we're going to kill off these innocent people. Now, you also have Jarvis realize that Silverclaw here is technically his sponsored young girl. So, of course, he takes Ren and they're happy to see one another. But this begins the process of her possibly joining the Avengers. Now, to close on the first chapter, you do have the Avengers go back over to Avengers Mansion where they're trying their best to figure out, like, where in the world could, Moses be at with that kind of weapon. But while you have the team trying to figure out that, for the Scarlet Witch, she's in her room. And out of nowhere, her powers do work again, where she does bring Wonder Man back to life. Where, for these two characters, being a couple in the past, they still have feelings for one another. And they begin to kiss one another. Here comes the drama, because while they're kissing, Vision also walks into the room. Now, for Wonder Man and Scarlet Witch, they don't realize that Vision was there, but Vision now realized that he may have lost his chance to get back with the Scarlet Witch. Now, as you get into issue number 9, you're really getting into the idea of the Avengers trying their best to break into this resort. And this resort is massive, but is well known as the Evangeline. And this resort is just out there in the middle of the ocean, where you have all these different kinds of people going there for all these different types of reasons. But for the Avengers, they believe that Moses Magnum is currently hiding on this resort. And so, of course, for our heroes, they want to try their best to get inside the actual place. Now, before we were able to see the Avengers go after Moses Magnum on the resort, we kind of go back in time where in the early mornings of today, the present day, you had our heroes come together at Avengers Mansion. Now, we're also kind of getting the idea once again that there's going to be another roster change as well, where you have somebody possibly leaving the team. Now, with all that being said, we kind of do get confirmation that for Silverclaw, she will now be part of the Avengers team as well. But while you do have the different members of the Avengers coming together, and also them kind of trying their best to express what's going on in their own personal lives, well, that is when you have the Vision get a call from Triathlon. Now, for Triathlon is him calling the Avengers to inform him that he had found out where Moses is currently hiding out at. Now, here's the thing, because earlier I did kind of mention the fact that when it came to Moses Magnum, that he was mutated by Apocalypse, where technically he gave Moses the ability to cause seismic waves. The problem is that for Apocalypse, he kind of got tired of Moses just failing over and over and over again, to the point where he allowed Moses to keep the powers, but took away the ability to control the powers. And so for Moses right now, the reason why he had basically took that cannon is a way for him to begin the process of having Apocalypse forgive him and regain control over his abilities. Because every single time for Moses, if he touches some kind of land, he is then able to cause earthquakes in that area. And so that kind of leads us back over to the present day, where you do have the Avengers at the moment just trying their best to, sneak their way into the actual resort. Now, for Hawkeye, he does run into Triathlon. Now, when he does, this begins the process of us learning the origin of this brand new character that for Marvel, you can kind of tell they were kind of hoping this character would truly work out. You see, for triathlon, he was a great Olympic. The dude won gold medals left and right. The problem was that he took steroids. And so, with him taking steroids, of course, they were kind of like, hey, we got to take back everything that you had earned as an athlete who was playing in the Olympics. Now, with all that being said, for him, he was not really able to get a dream job like he wanted as an athlete. And so, he found this community, this organization known as the Triune. Now, the Triune become very important in later chapters in our coverage over the Avengers. Just know that they are a group of people who go out of their way to help humans reach their full potential. And so apparently that is how he's now 3 times stronger and faster than a regular human. Now, unfortunately, we're not really able to get more information about this organization, but you then have the Avengers begin to fight against Moses Magnum. Now, this battle is really important for a lot of different reasons. And let me explain why. Because for Moses, we do learn the reason why he stole the cannon as a way to help him control his abilities, but to also as a way to impress Apocalypse. Because with the cannon and his powers, he would then be able to cause earthquakes almost anywhere across the world without actually being there. And so with him being able to do that, it should really impress Apocalypse a lot to allow Apocalypse to forgive Moses, but to also give back his ability to control over his powers. The thing is, in the middle of the battle, you do have the Scarlet Witch being able to go toe to toe with Moses Magnum. Now, the battle does kind of end with the Scarlet Witch almost getting killed off, but also because of Firestar. But with her being completely knocked out, out of nowhere, you didn't have Wonder Man appear. Now, with him appearing, it's really confusing because usually for the Scarlet Witch, she has to be awake to use her abilities to bring him back to life. But here's Wonder Man right now, just out of nowhere now being able to fight against Moses Magnum. And this kind of leads into the ending of this storyline because once you do have Wonder Man being able to grab Moses and they do head over to a body of land, well, for Moses, he begins to freak out because remember, Apocalypse took away his ability to control his powers. And so, without him having that ability to control his powers, for Moses Magnum, he begins to freak out because that means this area will now basically have an earthquake around him. And also for Apocalypse, he will now then be able to locate Moses because for Moses, he was trying his best to hide from Apocalypse until he was able to impress Apocalypse. The thing is, now with him being on land and causing an earthquake around him, well, for Apocalypse, that means he now knows where Moses is at. But on top of that, you didn't have this earthquake happen around Moses where the ground does open up, he falls in, and the ground seals up just like that. And we're kind of left to wonder what exactly happened to him. And really, you didn't have the book kind of end on the note where for Triathlon, there's a possibility that he'll be part of the Avengers. Silverclaw will stay with the Avengers as well, but for Hawkeye, he has officially left the team. Now, for Hawkeye, he'll go over to Thunderbolt Comics for a good period of time, but once again, the roster has changed. But this is the end of this storyline. So, with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But, guys, see y'all next time. Later.